Chikma Sahoshafoet Matthew Penna. I serve as a research and media specialist for the Chickasaw Nation Heritage Preservation Division, and today I have the privilege to take you on a virtual tour of Chisha Ta'lla'a Chickasaw Preserve. Come with me. Have you ever wondered what life would have been like for our Chickasaw ancestors when they were living in our homeland before removal? What daily activities constituted a normal day? How did our culture help us persevere through the hardships and challenges? Touring the Chickasaw Preserve may encourage some of these questions to come to mind. Here in Tupelo, Mississippi, we are in a historically active part of the Chickasaw homeland. This site is regarded as a portion of the Chickasaw community of Chisha Ta'lla'a. Chisha Ta'lla'a is in fact a community we see throughout time as historical documentation and archaeological research prove evidence of its existence. One of the oldest written references to the site is from Pierre Le Moyne d'Iberville, a French explorer who founded Louisiana when he was meeting with Chickasaw leaders in Mobile to discuss trade and alliance in 1702. Chisha Ta'lla'a was occupied up until around 1735 during conflicts with the French and Choctaw. The name Chisha Ta'lla'a in Chickasha means post oak grove, so you can imagine what natural feature was prominent in the area. After removal, we see the name Chisha Ta'lla'a spring up in Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma. Now I'd like to share with you how the Chickasaw Nation began preserving this site. The property was formerly owned by John Ray and Lottie Betts Beasley, who purchased it in the 1960s and called it Cedarscape due to the abundance of cedars you see around me. After they moved in, they began discovering Chickasaw artifacts all around the property. John Ray quickly realized this was an important cultural site, and as they grew older, they decided to sell the property, but they did not want to sell it to developers. It just so happens, during that time, the Chickasaw Nation and the Archaeological Conservancy were looking for a place to preserve in Mississippi. Together, the Chickasaw Nation and the Archaeological Conservancy's combined efforts were led by Governor Bill Anatubby to begin the preservation of the site. When the property was purchased, a cultural and natural resource management plan was created. The mission of the Chickasaw Nation is to enhance the overall quality of life of the Chickasaw people. We fulfill this mission by preserving, protecting, and interpreting early Chickasaw communities in the traditional homeland, which greatly contributes to telling the story of our Chickasaw ancestors and providing greater insight to our cultural identity. Our team here has worked hard to develop that connection in order to provide a place for people to reconnect with Chickasaw ancestors and history, educationally, emotionally, and spiritually here in the homeland. We created trail systems throughout the property, which is roughly 38 acres situated on a bluff ridge that overlooks the wet bottomland of Coonwah Creek. This trail is outfitted with 6 interpretive panels and 19 native plant panels that detail Chickasaw history and culture before removal. Some of the topics covered on the panels are migration, housing, foodways, arts, and celebrations. Now we will make our way along the cedar trails. Like our ancestors before us, we utilize the landscape as much as we can respectfully. The cedars are a recent addition due to the lack of annual burns and hardwood harvesting, so all these cedars that you see around me wouldn't have been here when our ancestors lived here. When we have to remove cedar trees, we process them through a wood chipper and reuse the chips on our trails to provide erosion control and aesthetics, all the while making the cedar aroma ever strong. The preserve is situated on a very unique type of land, which is part of the Blackland Prairie Belt, and it's characterized by dark soils on top of ancient chalk beds. This geographic feature can even be seen from space. This land was specifically chosen by our ancestors for its good soils to grow crops and its access to waterways for trade and transportation. Through our active management and restoration plan, we work to restore the land back to the way it was prior to European contact. Through the reintroduction of native plants, erosion control, and preventative measures to eliminate invasive plant species. Part of our active management and restoration plan is to partner with organizations like state agencies and universities to determine the best course of action. To share the history of our Chickasaw ancestors in our homeland, we need to understand the land they lived on and the plants that grew around them. To the general public, most of these appear to be weeds, grass, or typical plants, but these are not just mundane things we take for granted today. The plants located here at the Chickasaw Preserve were assets to everyday life, were vital for our ancestors' survival, and many of these plants are still here in our homeland. They would have been used to provide medicine, weapons, and tools, as well as for ceremonial purposes. Some of the wildflowers growing in this area were used as herbal remedies, cordage, and dye. When the season is right, this area is lit up in colors of yellow, purple, and white. Yellow coneflower leaves were used in an herbal tea, and the root was used to treat toothaches. The flowers of the goldenrod can be used for yellow dye. Growing on many trees like the cedar, you find resurrection fern, an interesting plant that for many of our visitors draws a personal connection to the strong spirit of our Chickasaw perseverance. This is called resurrection fern because it can lose most of its water content and dry up into a clump of brown leaves, but when it rains, it unfurls into a vibrant green plant again, thus the name resurrection fern. Today, as we collaborate with researchers, we were able to gain a broader understanding of the surroundings that our ancestors were so in tune with. As we walk around toward the ridge, you'll notice that the bottomland is a clear agricultural field. It was not this way when our ancestors lived here. Before modern agriculture and the controlling of waterways, this bottomland was a swampy wetland full of hardwoods, cypress trees, and canebrakes. This topography was chosen because the ridge allowed for a broad range of surveillance to scout out enemies and wild game. The swampy bottomland made it difficult for enemies to cross, and they faced an uphill battle to get to the community. With this strategic plan in place, the community homes were built along the upland area. In the upland area, where we are at now, these trees would have been harvested to build our homes, fortifications, and for other uses. So many of the trees you see around me would have not been here when our ancestors lived here. Some of the hardwood trees you can see are hickory, walnut, persimmon, and oak, like post oak, which the site is named after, and also many other hardwood trees. They were harvested for the lumber in building our palisade forts, summer longhouses, and winter roundhouses, as well as for weapons like bows, arrows, and war clubs. One of the strongest and most sought after trees for bows and ball sticks was bodark. You'll find this iconic tree in the preserve's landscape with its giant horse apples that wildlife enjoy eating. Other items like rakes, mortar and pestle, and even dugout canoes were common items crafted from the trees. Medicines could be harvested from them as well. Knowing our ancestors' deep connection to this land makes a walk on these trails more meaningful. Here, Chickasaws can connect to our ancestors by seeing this landscape and gaining knowledge through the interpretation and preservation of the site. At the Chickasaw Preserve, we have identified over 50 plant species, and this is one of the few sites that the federally protected Price's potato bean grows. Price's potato bean is a rare plant that is believed to have been harvested by our ancestors for its edible tubers that look like potatoes. Our preserve team has developed an extensive preservation and restoration plan as they work diligently with conservationists to uncover the mysteries of this plant. Understanding just one plant can tell us more than we can imagine about the ecosystem that helped our ancestors thrive. The second type of trail that we have are the grass trails, and these are designed this way to protect against erosion on some of our more challenging terrain. Along the grass trails, you can connect with nature and continue to find informational plant panels. This panel highlights the rare Indian pink, which during the right season grows throughout the understory with its yellow and red colors. The flower is pollinated by Fohi, Hatathpashik, Micha Flecomac, which are bees, butterflies, and hummingbirds. This plant may have been harvested by our ancestors for its use in digestive health, specifically brewed as a tea. Ethnobotanical research is underway on this site's Indian pink population by university researchers to understand growth patterns, pollination, and chemical compounds that fight off internal parasites. A unique thing about the different types of research here is that if we can identify plants that were tribally specific, we can relate that botanic information to archaeological research, helping us identify additional cultural and historical connections to our ancestors. Back on the Cedar Trail, another plant of cultural importance that we like to point out is Yaupon holly. Let's take a look at it right over here. Because of its high visibility in anthropological literature, we like to point out this plant in our Homeland tours. The leaves of the yaupon would have been gathered for its natural caffeine and brewed into a tea, having similar effects as coffee. Early European explorers called it black drink because of how dark it made the tea water, but our ancestors called it white drink, or okatobi. Tobi, the color white, represents purity, happiness, and harmony. Yaupon was used to purify the body before battles, stickball games, and for other ceremonies. Foraging was a basic component of life, and this is how it may have been for our ancestors walking a known path in pursuit of medicine or food. Another plant of cultural importance that we're restoring here is Rivercane. The history of Rivercane is extremely diverse and important to Chickasaws and other southeastern Indian tribes. Rivercane was used for an assortment of items like basketry, woven mats, arrows, knives, blowguns, traps, and for my favorite, which are flutes. We are working with external and intertribal organizations to increase genetic diversity by planting new stands of Rivercane at the preserve from other locations across the South. One day we hope to provide Chickasaws the opportunity to harvest Rivercane themselves and use the plants grown in the homeland as our ancestors once did. The next feature I'll highlight is a pond made by John Ray Beasley in the 1960s. What is unique about this pond is the Demopolis chalk bed that gives the pond a clear greenish tint. This chalk is made up of 65-million-year-old fossilized shell and is an important characteristic to find in archaeology. It is very specific to Chickasaw pottery as it was commonly crushed up and used as temper to make the pottery stronger. And when it is found, it can help archaeologists identify a Chickasaw site. The fossilized shell was also crushed and added to clay to create a stronger insulation for our winter homes. Here's the last area that I will take you today, the Three Sisters Garden. In the garden, we bring tradition and preservation together as we grow the Three Sisters and other native plants. You'll find the Three Sisters, Tanchi, Bala, Micha, Obi, corn, beans, and squash. And here, they are prepared for the season to grow in their mounds. Our ancestors would have planted and cultivated the Three Sisters around Chisha Ta'lla'a. In preparation for growing the Three Sisters, they would clear farmland with fire every season. Let me show you some of the wildflowers that are growing in the garden right now. Next to me we have echinacea, or purple coneflower, and it's well known for its herbal remedies. Right over here we have bee balm. It's from the mint family and it can be brewed into a tea. Right next to that is blazing star, and then to the left of me will be milkweed. And these are grown this way in order to encourage pollinators to the garden to help the Three Sisters grow. The trellis was made as a tribute to the beauty and travels of the monarch butterflies who visit this site during their journeys. Beneath the trellis, we plant native flowering vines like climbing milkweed, climbing hempweed, and purple and yellow passionflower. When they grow up the trellis, the leaves provide a coverage for the caterpillars while they wait in their chrysalis to become butterflies. After the butterflies are gone and the plants are ready to harvest, we gather all the wildflower seed and spread it throughout the site to restore the landscape with a beautiful array of flowers that were once found abundantly here. I enjoyed taking you on this virtual tour to learn about the preservation and historic community of Chisha Ta'lla'a. Chisha Ta'lla'a was an important site for our ancestors and will continue to play an important role in enhancing our cultural identity, all the while connecting the past to the present. It is an amazing opportunity to provide for the Chickasaw people a connection with our ancestors' way of life through the preservation and partnerships that help promote our history and cultural identity. Governor Bill Anatobi has led our nation into a cultural renaissance that continues to unfold in places like the Chickasaw Preserve. Through the management and restoration of the Chickasaw Preserve, we can see a reflection of the unconquered and unconquerable spirit of the Chickasaw people. If you have any questions about the Chickasaw Preserve, please email historyinquiries@chickasaw.net. Yakuki, Chipisalacho.